Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, where we will explore what it means to work, live, and play in the Bayou region. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the people and experiences that make our region such a special place to live and work. On each podcast, we will talk to individuals who are making our region grow and go, who are making strides in uplifting our community. This is a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Welcome back to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. I'm your host, Chancellor Christine Strickland, and I have another very exciting guest to share some adventures and stories and information with today. I'd like to welcome President of LMOGA, Mr. Tommy Faucheux. Welcome.
Glad to be here. How are you?
Oh, I am well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to do.
Appreciate it. Well, look, I don't know if you're familiar with our podcast here, but we always start with something we call 5 and 5. It's 5 questions to get to know you a little bit better in about 5 minutes. So we keep the answer short, we keep it rolling, but let's get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
I'm going to start off with, tell us just a little bit about your background. And tell us how you became really the president of LMOGA and what inspired you to pursue that leadership role?
So, I have had a love for politics. I tell people all the time, literally since I was a little boy. I joke, my first political memory is sitting in the living room with my parents watching a Ronald Reagan press conference. President walking down that long red carpet in the White House. Yeah. That image has always been seared. And so I've loved politics my entire life. When I went to college, I decided I would be a communications and poli-sci major. And from there, worked, when I graduated from Loyola, I worked in local government for a short while, then went to Dow Chemical, where I really fell in love with the industry. And we could talk more about, all the things industry has done for me and for all of us. It just led me to a place where I have a great passion for Louisiana. This role 3 years ago when it came open was just a great opportunity to represent an industry that I think is foundational to Louisiana and to help make Louisiana a better place and do it through the political lens. So it's like everything was just coming together.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a perfect kind of storm of all the things you love in a position. How wonderful. All right, so now tell us, is there a book that's had a significant impact on you that you'd like to share?
Sure, and I read it here just a couple years ago. So it's called The Man Who Ran Washington by Peter Baker. It is a book about, going back to the Reagan days, James Baker, who was President Reagan's chief of staff, a tried and true Texan who really was not of the Washington atmosphere. Didn't start in that world, but quickly became one of the most respected non-elected leaders in history, I believe. President Reagan's chief of staff, First President Bush's Secretary of State, statesman respected around the world, played a key role in the Bush v. Gore saga of the 2000 election, and just everything about him. And the book was so well written because it really, personal tragedy, professional failures, professional successes, from the lowest to the highest, just something that one of the stories and biographies that I've read that I just truly feel all of us, not only just in the political government space, but even in leadership and, just kind of evaluating professional success could learn from. And just a great individual, someone who I've followed for many years, and the book just nails it.
Awesome. I'm going to add that to my list. This year, I decided that one of my New Year's resolutions or goals was going to be to read more. And I love biographies, autobiographies. So I decided that one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to start, I'm on George Washington, but I want to read one book about each president this year. And so I'm going to add that one, though, because it kind of falls into that realm, and it sounds pretty intriguing. So tell me about 1 or 2 life lessons that you have learned along your journey that you wish you would have known earlier in your life.
Oh, I love this. First is have humility. You go from a phase of thinking you know it all. I was in a situation, and not that I'm pretending to be older now, I'm in my mid 40s. I was often the youngest guy in a lot of rooms that I was working in. Generationally, our industry and political leadership is turning now, but for many years, prior to things like term limits and what have you, I would often find myself, being the youngest person in the room and trying to really punch up. And, you can do that to an extent, but you also, I did not value the being honest, admitting what you don't know, having enough humility to know that, okay, I could have done that better. I shouldn't have engaged in that fight. I think from a personal reflection standpoint, I think it's key. And what I'm also learning is this age thing. I don't know what it's all about. My
I
kids,
feel you. I feel you.
I have two middle school age kids. My oldest is going to high school next year. Just the need to not, I've always done a good job of, hey, today is a light day. I can take advantage of it. But the need to actually say, no, a month from now, I'm going to schedule this time, this day, to just walk away from everything for 24 hours or 48 hours. The idea of planning the time away from work, away from the chaos, probably the two of the biggest lessons. And, it leads to balance, obviously. But that humility one, I come back to often. I think sometimes, particularly in our industry, egos can get in the way. And having some humility can help check that.
Absolutely. And, I think as leaders, a lot of times too, people look to us to have all the answers. And so I think it's very brave oftentimes. And it was a lesson that actually I learned early on in my career. I went into a meeting and a board member asked me a question and I really didn't know the answer. And if I couldn't even fake it. Like my face was just one of those like deer in the headlight. I don't know what to say. And I said, I don't know the answer, but I'll get back to you. And that person pulled me aside and said that they appreciated that so much, that I didn't try to fake my way through it, that I didn't try to give them an answer that maybe was only partially correct, but that I did follow up. And that was
Sure.
so important to them. And that was, I think that goes to part of what you were saying in that a lot of times in leader, as a president of an organization, everybody's looking to you.
Yes.
And you want to be able to have the right answer at the right time. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily work out, but to have the humility to say, I need to check on that, or to not try to fake it till you make it.
Because we don't want to
right?
disappoint, right?
Right.
But at the same
Exactly.
time, we can't do it all.
Exactly. So tell us, how do you unwind and recharge your batteries? It sounds like you're working on that a little bit
That's
with
right.
saying no to some things, but other things that you like to do?
So, the things I love, I am a diehard New Orleans Saints fan.
Oh,
Have
okay.
been since birth. Going through a rough patch here.
Mm.
I'm holding out hope for the change that is coming. But I love all things Saints. We're season ticket holders. It's funny to watch how it's transitioned. I can remember going to games, me and my dad, then it's me and my wife. Then it was me and my wife and the little bitty kids, and now it's me and my son who's, getting older. It's transitioning. I am the constant, but the folks who come along. But I mean, it is something I love, and always the end of football season is sad to see. Also a huge NASCAR fan.
Really?
Try to get to at least one NASCAR race a
Okay.
year. Been to Daytona 500 several times, which is just something I love. And so we try to do that. And then, outside of it, it is my wife and kids. It's just doing what we like to do, as much or as little as we can do. And I like that time. It helps me unwind. Really big into my faith. I'm a Catholic. That part of me in downtime to unwind is extremely important. It all goes together, and because often I find myself in the Superdome praying for what's happening for the Saints.
And I bet you're doing a lot of that
That's
these
right.
days. Yeah, for definitely. It's been a rough season and a
Sure.
long one. I think hopefully brighter days are ahead of us. Do you have a favorite driver in NASCAR?
I do. So I was a Tony Stewart fan forever.
Okay.
He retired. The luxury of being able to retire when you're in your 40s in any career. And then my son and I, he was really getting into it about the time that Tony Stewart retired. And so we became Kevin Harvick fans, who just retired a year ago. Oh. And so we're now following this new young driver who we are, really starting to get into. And the name has just slipped my mind as I sit here right there talking to you. But yeah, driver number 24 car. I can't believe I'm
Number
going blank
24
on
car.
that.
Okay, so go Google that.
That's right. Go Google that.
I'm sure people who are my listeners out there who are NASCAR fans are probably like,
Yes.
"Oh, I wish I could say
I
it right
know. I'm
now. I
going
know it."
blank. It's crazy.
So that's all right. But so last of the five, but five. Do you have a mentor or someone important who's played an important role in your personal and/or professional life that you'd like to maybe give a shout out to?
Yeah, I have a couple. In my very young life, there was a um, gentleman named Brad Grummeyer who was a good friend, and we still stay in touch. Um, I met him. I was a senior at Hahnville High School, and he came to school looking. He was working for Cox Communications at the time in New Orleans, and they were starting a high school TV show that was going to run, on cable networks in New Orleans, and really helped me put my mind to figuring out what my passion was and how to get started. And Brad's just a great man, great husband, dad, professional, and so he had a huge impact on my young life. Now I have a few people that are really people that I lean on. Stephen Wagasback, who led Lobby for many years, is a good friend and someone that I spend time talking to. And then on the personal side, there is a deacon in my church named Coy Landry, who is 90 years old.
So are you going? You're not going to believe this. I know Coy.
Oh,
I
do
worked
you?
with him
From his time where?
at University of Holy Cross.
Okay.
Used to be Our
So when
Lady
he
of
was at Holy
Cross.
Cross, I was cutting his grass.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I
What
can
a
remember him
small
coming
world.
home.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Coy and I have known each other since I was 10 years old. And just a really special man
He is.
who has guided me in all things with my family, faith life, professionally, somebody I can talk to. It's a big hug every weekend when I see him, and just someone who I love and treasure. And I mean, 90 years old and has more energy than a lot of 50-year-olds. Just a fantastic person.
And I'm so glad to hear that he's doing so well.
He
It has
is.
been a minute since I had seen him or heard anything about
Yeah.
him, and that is such
That's
great
awesome.
news. That is.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things I love about Louisiana, I'm not from here originally, but have I'm now lived here as actually longer than I lived in Ohio. But I love the fact that it might be a big state, but it's very small in terms of relationships and the family connections and just that sort of everybody knows everybody and that you have the ability to really cultivate these deep relationships that you find people that you didn't even know knew somebody, right? Everybody kind of has that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon separation. But how neat. Well,
Yeah.
please tell him I said hello.
I absolutely will. I will send it this. He keeps up with everything that I'm up to and what I'm doing, and he will enjoy seeing this for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, look, let's jump in and talk about a little bit about LMOGA. We might have some folks out in our listening audience who aren't familiar
Sure.
with LMOGA. So maybe you could just start pretty high level. Tell us who is LMOGA and what do you guys do?
So there's a reason for the acronym. The name is the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association, which you have to take a breath midway through that. We are the industry trade association for Louisiana's oil and natural gas industry. We have 70 or so member companies of all sizes across the industry, and so when you think about oil and gas in Louisiana, that is the Haynesville Shale natural gas producers in North Louisiana, LNG companies who have investing across the coast, refineries, the pipeline companies who connect everyone, the offshore industry. So, we have this tremendous Gulf of Mexico industry here in the Bayou region. You know that firsthand. So the Shells, BP, Chevron, Exxon, Woodsides, all those companies are members of ours. And then, of course, some of our newest members have been these companies who are coming to Louisiana to invest in carbon capture, which is something that is growing pretty quickly, still early on in Louisiana. And so as an industry trade association, we represent them in a couple of ways. We're doing advocacy on their behalf, making sure that people understand the industry and are supportive in communities like yours and others around the state. And then, of course, we're advocating for policy that allows us to be successful and to be competitive So representing them in Baton Rouge during the legislative session and throughout the year. We have a fairly strong presence in Washington. It's a key time in Washington right now. We represent, particularly that offshore and LNG industry. And so, yeah, I mean, as an association, it's just our job to try to create the conditions on behalf of our members to allow our industry to grow. And it's a foundational industry of Louisiana. It's particularly important. And so our mission is to keep it that way.
Yeah. Do you anyone who's doing business and is working in the energy sector become a member of LMOGA, or is it limited? Do you have like a cap in the number of members that you want in terms of representing them in advocacy work? Or
No, look, there's a couple of ways you can engage. So if you're an oil and gas company, you are absolutely, there is a category of membership for you. But then we also have a separate category of membership that really, it's called our Gulf Economic Sustainability Team. And so what it is really, it's all of those support companies. When I come down here, I always think of Danos, for example. Danos is a member via that category of membership because they're supporters of the industry. They work with us. They allow us to be successful. Our success is their success. We work together on issues that are important to everyone. So yeah, there are many ways to engage. And then even if you're not a member, we're constantly looking for places to partner. We are some of the world's largest companies operating in some of Louisiana's smallest communities when you really think about it. We need to understand those communities. We want to work with the partners in those communities so that we can work on their issues, and hopefully they will support us at the times when we need them as well.
hmm That's such a great point. And one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is in terms of the communities that you serve, or that the companies that you represent serve around our state. In what ways do you engage with those communities? What does that work look like, and how do you connect the company to some of those things in their communities?
Well, the great thing is a lot of our member companies are very much engaged in the communities where they operate. So, let's use the Bayou region. Obviously, Port Faucheux is a key part. It's kind of that connecting point to the offshore. I tell people all the time, this is the threshold, if you will, to the offshore industry. Those companies tend to engage because they understand the need for strong education workforce, economic sustainability. What we try to do as an association is look at the greater good. Each company is unique. They all have their own cultures, their own goals, their own investments. So we try to look at what makes the greater whole stronger. And from a partnership standpoint, I mean, look, some of my strongest partnerships are at SCIA and SLEC and the parish president's offices in these parishes. And, we have similar relationships around the state. One of the favorite parts of my job is going visit, whether it's, speaking at a luncheon or a breakfast or just going sit down and having coffee with local folks, because they know the good and the bad and the ugly of what's happening on the ground. They can say, Tommy, we need more of X. We have people looking for opportunities. We can't connect them. We have parents who are trying to figure out how to explain what the future path should look like for their kids, and they need to know more about the industry. I often talk with local school officials, superintendents. We've talked some with guidance counselors. How do you build those relationships? So it's really about going out. Matter of fact, in 2025, it's one of my goals. I was sharing this with some of my members this morning, to even be more present in our communities. The success of our operation and recognition that our companies and our industry are members of the community is extremely, extremely important. Because I think if we ever lose that connection, then we're not going to be successful. Community's not going to get what they need from us, and we're not going to have the support that we need from them.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. And there's so much good in there. I'm not even sure. I would kind of want to go in a couple different directions,
Sure.
but I'm gonna stay with the community for a minute, because you touched on something that we are seeing here at Fletcher, and I'd like to almost get your take on this in terms of school systems and talking to future students and parents. So we've seen sort of with the cycle of oil and gas, right? Kind of the ups and the downs. Uh, we have parents now who were children in the 80s with the downturn.
Sure.
And then we had a downturn in 2013, 2014 timeframe, right, where you saw some difficult times in the industry. And things are beginning, they're picking back up and everything. But what we're seeing is a decline in this interest in students in entering into, for instance, our energy production program. What would you say to those students and in particular parents? We hear a lot of times from parents, I've been in the business for a long time. Now maybe I want my child to go in a different direction. Why should they, what's the word, what's the message to superintendents and to parents out there who are listening about why the energy sector and why is this a place where you want your child to pursue a career?
So this could be an hour-long conversation in itself.
We'll bring you back too for
But
another
I'm
one.
gonna give you just a little bit of I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse into my personal history because I think it's relevant here. I'm a child born in the early '80s, born in 1980. I come from a family. Both of my grandfathers and my father all worked in industry, either in oil and gas or petrochemicals. My dad, I can still remember, the company he was working for, a chemical company, shut down in the mid '80s, as a lot of companies were doing. And he ultimately ended up going to work for Chevron, where he retired after 30-something years. But he had that experience. I'm the first person in my family to go to college because of that industry. Dad, papa, grandpa, all worked in the industry, very much, blue-collar careers, but were successful. I think that story is not unique to me by any means, particularly in South Louisiana. A lot of people my age who are now parents of, like I said, I have middle school age kids who are starting to think about what is high school, what does college look like, what is career paths. I think we're all asking those questions. And what I continue to tell friends of mine who are trying to figure out this is, one, our children are going to choose to go whatever direction they want to. As we guide them, let's just make sure we're giving them all of the information. One, the chemicals industry, the oil and gas industry of the 80s, we're so far from that. Yes, are there ups and downs in the economy? Yes, across, we never know what's going to happen in business in general.
Any
but
sector.
including our own sector. But we need to give them all the facts. I tell people all the time, if your kids are thinking, you hear all these kids, they all want to go work for Elon Musk, right? They all want to go work at SpaceX or do something. We want something exciting or cool. The oil and gas industry of 2025 is a high-tech industry. Yeah. We are doing things onshore, offshore, in the labs, in R&D that have not been done before. If you want to contribute to an energy economy, there are endless opportunities. Whether you want to go the 2-year university route, if you want to come to Fletcher, if you want to go to LSU, if you want to go to UL, there are endless opportunities in the industry. If you want to solve environmental challenges, if you want to work towards reducing carbon in the atmosphere, guess what? There's a career in our industry for that too, because the companies that I represent are going to be the companies who are going to make the biggest investments and move the needle in taking carbon out of the atmosphere in a world that really does want to decarbonize while continuing to produce energy. And so what I think, we have to do a good job. I can remember going through the cycle when I was at Dow. You'd go to high schools and the guidance counselors would say, the parents are saying these kids have to go to the 4-year university. They have to pursue a professional career. Yes, in our communities, I'm from St. Charles Parish. Everything we have in many ways is related to industrial investment, but I want something different for my kids. And what I think we did there and we're trying to do as an industry now is say, hold on a second. Understand the opportunities. Parents, if you want to get in and see our industry firsthand because you don't know it, then do it. And we're telling schools and guidance counselors, you go see so that you know what you're advocating on behalf of. If you're a parent who's like, look, I grew up in the industry, I don't want that for my kid, just remember it's changing, and there are more opportunities, I think, in the oil and gas sector right now that I think can bring excitement to a young kid's eyes than ever before, and we're seeing so much potential as we do talk about low carbon energy, energy dominance, energy security. There's so many ways that I think our young people can engage, and we do, and it's important on behalf of the industry. We have to make sure that our professionals in education understand the opportunities and know how to communicate it to the kids. And where they feel like they can't, well, then just connect them directly with us because we want to show them as well.
Wonderful. And that's one of the things that I see all the time, that there are these incredible opportunities for students, and many of whom just need a 2-year degree, like
That's
what we
right.
do here at Fletcher, right? We have this great energy production technologies program, and it provides you with a number of pathways. It's not necessarily that you have to go offshore. You can, but you can also go work in the plants on the river. You can go work on the pipelines. You can do some of the environmental things that you were talking about through that program. And I know LMOGA has just been a tremendous partner to Fletcher in this work. And so maybe you could take a minute and talk about not just your partnership with Fletcher, because I would love for you to
Sure.
highlight the things that we do together, but I know that you are all you at LMOGA are very tightly interwoven with the community college system around the state. Again, you represent companies who are in every corner of our great state. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what those partnerships look like.
Look, it really is a tremendous partnership, and I will start with Fletcher because
Yay.
I often tell people. I mean, I love coming to the Bayou region. Um, we just see a passion, and I think it's because it is really part of the fabric, the culture of our communities. So many people who live here, the parents of a lot of the kids who now come here for their education are from the industry, and I think there's a personal point of pride that comes with that. But look, I think the partnership with not just Fletcher, but across the community technical college system. Monty Sullivan is someone I talk to on a regular basis about what the needs of the industry are. The partnership is strong just for that. You guys with endlessly ask us, what can we do to help your industry be successful, to create opportunities for young people, people maybe wanting to change careers, families. What do you need from us so that you guys can educate those students and prepare them for jobs in our industry? And I think that is the magic in the partnership. I mean, I think in a way because it has been, I go back to the days of process technology when I was at Dow. You know, industry was sitting side by side with educators in our community technical college system, writing curriculum,
Yep.
finding instructors, finding internship opportunities to then take it out of the classroom and into the field. Um, you guys are doing that here. We can't do it without you. And I think, look, let's be very real. I'm starting to think about what the costs of higher education will be for my family. Um, you know, I feel like it's a broken record sometimes. The salaries in our industry can really be strong.
Yeah.
The salaries that you can get with a 2-year degree, the opportunities you're going to have because of dual enrollment, working in as a high school student towards your post-secondary education. What we are creating here in Louisiana by, the education systems, both the 4 and 2-year system, working with our school districts, public schools in particular, um, working with our local community partners. I mean, we're creating in many ways an incubator for the future workforce. And it's extremely important. Education is obviously a key part. We also have to solve other issues like making sure you can afford to live in our communities because of
Correct.
insurance and things like that. And I think that's important because it is a holistic conversation.
Yeah.
But the work you guys are doing at Fletcher, the work we're doing across the state, in our um, secondary schools and in our community technical college systems and our universities. It's what's going to create the opportunities to reach what I think is a shared goal amongst industry, our governor, parents and grandparents, of keeping people at Louisiana. We want our kids, we want our future workforce to grow up here and stay here.
Yeah.
It's a universal goal in many ways on the personal and on the business side.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think Fletcher does really well. Over 95% of our students will stay in state or local, regional. And so having the opportunity to gain the education and or the training that you need right down from your house, from where you maybe are working, right, where you're raising your children, is essential. And that's, why I think the presence of the community colleges around the state is so vitally important to making sure that people have access to that education and training that they need. And you made a really good point. A lot of times we think about higher education in terms of the 18-year-old maybe who's graduating high school, but we have so many students. In fact, our average age here at Fletcher is 29 years old. And so we have a number of individuals who maybe finished high school, maybe didn't finish high school, who come in and say, I'm looking for a new career. I'm looking for a change or an opportunity, and they can do that here. In fact, I want to give a quick shout out to our sister institution at Sewella in Lake Charles, big LNG.
Yep.
And one of the things they did working with their partners over there, their business and industry partners, was to say, for those who want to come back or make career changes and you're interested in going into that field, we're going to develop an accelerated program. And they actually have something where if you have a baccalaureate degree, but you want to go into whether it's oil and gas or just the energy sector in general, that you can get retrained very quickly because you have a lot of the gen eds, right? You've already done your English and your math and your psychology and your history, but it's getting that specialized training that enables people to pivot and make career changes and to find really a new life's path for themselves in some of these energy sectors that are really taking hold, always have been foundational, but we're seeing tremendous growth, I know, especially over in that area of our state in the LNG world.
Someone I appreciated a lot, and he's been deceased now for several years, but growing up in St. Charles, Dr. Rodney LaFawn, who was superintendent there for many, many years, he didn't get in front of an audience of 2 or 2,000 without talking about the importance of lifelong learning and the importance of just being open to new opportunities. And I mean, I really do think it's something that you guys really excel at. And it's important for us because, right now, when you look at, you mentioned LNG, I mean, the number of people we need in the LNG space, major investments in the Mississippi River by Venture Global, Cheniere in Southwest Louisiana, Woodside is now getting into the LNG space. Just in LNG alone, you need people, and it's going to take some people making career changes in their 30s and 40s, and it is important that we meet people where they are at, based on whatever their history has been. What career they may be leaving. Maybe they're looking for new opportunities. And we got to remember, we're helping the individual. But when we help the individual, no matter where they are, find opportunity, we're often helping a family. It's a package deal. Yeah. And one career in one household can mean, everything to the future of the others who live in that home.
Absolutely.
And, I'd like to think it would be this way everywhere, but I think in Louisiana, it's very much everything is so family oriented.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that when we provide career opportunities, yes, it's good for the individual, but it's fantastic for the family as well. We had Industry Day. It's an event we do with Grow Louisiana in Baton Rouge every year during the legislative session. And 2 years ago, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but I talked about graduation rates in many of the parishes where we operate, the impacts on families, the families where mom or dad is working in the industry, while the son or daughter is trying to figure out what high school looks like. I mean, it is a total package, and many of our companies I know very much look at the whole family and understand that impact they have, and that builds community as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned being a lifelong learner.
Sure.
I'm going to be a lifelong learner right now.
Okay.
Okay, because I want you to school me up a little bit. Tell me and our listeners about shale and about carbon capture.
Sure.
Can you give me a 101 class?
Yeah, I can.
College 101.
I can do a little bit about this. There's it's funny. There's a television show on Paramount that's out called Landman. It's getting a lot of attention right now. And look, you have to be willing. I mean, it's a drama to say the least. But it's a West Texas based TV show with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh, okay.
That is,
I'm intrigued already.
in many ways, showing the oil and gas and the onshore industry to a lot of people across the country. They had in their final episode of the season. They were talking about shale. We've had a lot of opportunity in North Louisiana with shale gas and fracking and being able to, it used to be that you drilled, straight down into the earth and you got what was down there, all the gas, and you bring it out. In many ways, we're going through this rock and we're going diagonally in different ways, horizontally to unlock, the minerals of oil and gas that are down there. And so the technology, it's what I talked about earlier about being high tech, finding new ways to get more out of the energy resources we have, going through shale, rock, to be able to unlock minerals is extremely important to Louisiana's industry. On the carbon capture side, this is exciting because a lot of people assume that you're either pro-oil and gas or you're pro-climate carbon reduction, reducing atmospheres. And the truth is we need it all. Every study tells us that the energy demands of this world are only going to increase over the next 25, 30 years. Right. The demand for oil and gas is only going to increase. So we need all the oil and gas we can produce, which is fantastic for Louisiana's and the U.S. industry. And we're going to do that. However, the world clearly also wants to decarbonize. And I say all that because it's why CCS, carbon capture in Louisiana, is particularly important. And I'll explain why we have an advantage there. Our industry will be by far and has the resources to by far be the leader in investing in newer technologies. And those are technologies that will either produce oil and gas with a lower carbon footprint or find ways to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Louisiana is unique because we have all these energy companies. Right. We have, some of the world's best operating either in, on or offshore. They also have the technology, they have the experts, they have the scientists, the researchers who can tell us how to coexist with, the goals of reducing carbon. And what we're doing through CCS is we're basically capturing the carbon dioxide that comes out of the chemicals manufacturing process, the oil and gas production process. We're capturing it, and then we're finding appropriate geological locations 2 miles below the Earth's surface. And we're going to inject it and send it down there, where it will literally just become part of the Earth's atmosphere. And when you think about it, most of the carbon being produced either in the oil and gas production phase or in the chemicals process, it's coming from the energy that started a mile or two below the Earth. So in many ways, we're taking
like a full circle.
We're taking carbon dioxide,
right?
We're putting it back. I heard the governor explain it this one way, and he's like, we're just putting it back to where it came from. And so what's unique for Louisiana is obviously we contribute as an industry to reducing carbon, which is extremely important for the environment. But at the same time, our expertise over 100 years in Louisiana in oil and gas production is what's allowing us to be a national leader in carbon capture in Louisiana. What that means on the economic side, we can create the jobs before any other state in the country. We can see the local economic benefits before anyone else in the country. And so really for the last 2 years, we've worked extremely hard to build the framework, both at a policy and a regulatory level, to make sure that the industry can be successful here. And you're seeing many member companies of mine, oil and gas companies that we all know, making investments in this technology. So it's good for the industry. It's good for the atmosphere. but it's a unique opportunity. And one of those places where Louisiana, for once, can step out and lead in industry, which is important because we're always
Yeah.
competing with Texas and New Mexico and Oklahoma and Georgia and all these others. And here we are, we have our own opportunities to step out and own something. And there will be benefits that come from that.
That's pretty cool. Thank you for that intro
There you
class.
go.
I appreciate it. We might have to have you come teach something like
Yeah,
in
I don't know how many credit hours you get for that explanation, but it's
Yeah.
important.
But it also it sort of reiterates for me. I know we talk a lot down here about energy addition, and
Very
that
much.
oil and gas is still going to be a cornerstone of everything we do. It is not moving away from, but it is adding to. And I love the idea that there are these sectors where Louisiana can lead. We have been leaders,
Yeah.
right? But continuing to be on the forefront of that is really, really pretty cool. We talked a lot about technology. I just have to ask, what's the coolest technological thing that you have seen recently that the industry is bringing to bear? And I'm hoping maybe we'll capture the interest of some listeners out there who are thinking about this as a career.
You know, I am forever amazed. So I did. I mean, I spent, a decade and a half in the chemical industry working for Dow, which was great. And I mean, I'd get in and out of these plants, and I mean, just the size of these machines was always fantastic. The oil and gas space is, I mean, it's really what I am continuously amazed by is the ability to go further. When we look in the offshore space, the idea that you can go miles below the Earth's surface, below the surface of the ocean,
Right.
the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America, if it gets renamed, is the latest thing out there we're all following. But the ability to go a mile below the the surface of the ocean, and to go even further below the base of the Gulf of Mexico, I think is just amazing. And what I think impresses me so much is just that we can coexist. If you go offshore, it is some of the prettiest water you've ever seen. And yes, we're out there doing our work far below, the surface of the earth. And every now and then you have a company who comes out and says, we can go further. We can do more. And what I look in that, what I think amazes me the most is just, it's so cool that an industry that is, in Louisiana, a century plus old, constantly finds new ways to do more, constantly reinvents itself. And I think, there are endless opportunities. And, when I was talking about the carbon capture and also meeting the future energy demands of the world a few minutes ago, I mean, when you think about the fact that, I often say a world that needs more oil and gas and a world that wants a healthier, cleaner environment needs Louisiana more than ever. That is so true. And I think that is probably the coolest part. And if I was talking to a group of high school kids, I would tell them that right now. There's a lot out there. There is a large anti-fossil fuel lobby and NGOs and organizations that push against oil and gas. There are large groups of people who want to see healthier environment. There are also a lot of people who believe that oil and gas and American energy can solve all the world's geopolitical problems. That to me is even more amazing, I think, than any technology, because there's room for all of it. It really is. You mentioned energy addition. I mean, it really is. It's not a transition. We're not leaving anything behind. We're just adding on to the expertise and the global leadership position we've had on energy production for many years. We're just adding on to it to say, hey, we can do more. You haven't heard the last of us. Right. We know what we're doing. We can be the best. And that's extremely important in Louisiana. It's important in the United States. And we're seeing, I mean, LNG is a great example. We're seeing the benefits we can have to allies and countries around the world. To me, that's the coolest part. And you can figure out what place you have in that larger conversation. But there's a place for everyone.
Awesome. So one of the things that we know here in Louisiana is we are obviously very prone to a hurricane or two. And just be interested to know, we talk often about Port Faucheux being the gateway to energy for our nation.
Sure.
And I'd like to know, just from the companies and the business and industry that you represent, what are they doing to sort of fortify themselves against storms in the Gulf that sometimes disrupt right? Drilling
Sure.
or the oil and gas production process all the way up through. And can you speak to sort of what are they doing to ensure that we have consistent energy production, even when we have significant weather events now?
Well, look, to your point, hurricanes are not something that are foreign to us. And because you have enough of them, you also, there is not a storm that happens where you don't look back afterwards and say, okay, how could we have been better?
Right.
And the truth is, I mean, the downtime from a Gulf of Mexico storm is getting shorter and shorter. Obviously, the size of a storm,
Right.
the punch that it packs matters. But I think we're learning how, we're constantly getting better at, you know, shutting down, coming back up. How do we service that? Look, our industry in this region has been a tremendous component to making sure we have the infrastructure needed to get down to Port Faucheux. I mean, you look at the efforts to elevate LA1
Yep.
and all the work done by the LA1 Coalition and Henri, and I think it was done with the industry sitting very much in the front row at the table.
Yep.
That's just one example that I wish we could take, and we need to do a better job of showing the country with the investments in a highway through Lafourche Parish all the way down to Port Faucheux, what the value of that highway can mean. It's extremely important. I think, from an onshore perspective, I remember after Hurricane Ida, so I was in St. Charles, Lafourche,
Yep.
Terrebonne, St. Charles were the hardest hit.
Yep.
We all had, very real impacts. And I can remember going to an event a couple of days after everyone returned home. Power still wasn't back on. And we were in a parking lot, actually, of the St. Charles LCTCS campus
Oh, okay.
of River Parishes down in Booty. Standing in that parking lot, there were people in line to get, local services. There was water, distribution of commodities, and all of the work was happening under the tents of Valero and Shell and Dow and all of these industries and Bear. Our industry has has understood for many years that their success, after a storm in many ways is tied to the success of the community. We either all come back or we don't come back.
Yeah.
And I think, that partnership and investing in, whether it's, local emergency preparedness resources, being there at the time of need, loaning experts, loaning engineers, electricians from a refinery, working with the public works in a community to make sure that the generators are all tied in correctly at public buildings or pump stations. Sometimes I feel like we take it for granted when we're from some of our industrial communities, but I mean, there are just so many examples of, hardening the assets so that we can be reliable in production, because we know we need gasoline after a storm. Making sure the refineries can operate, and then making sure that the community needs are met. We're in all those spaces.
Yeah.
You're in South Louisiana, you're not going to escape hurricanes. So if you're a business or industry in Louisiana, you have to be part of that.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that we've seen pretty consistently down here in our region is that our industry partners show up in the big ways, but also in the small ways that sometimes do get overlooked, or maybe aren't, the headline grabbing things, but they're here when we have an event at Fletcher and they sponsor us, or they provide a scholarship for a student who really
Sure.
needs it. And then, obviously the bigger projects, but a lot of times it's the smaller ways that really make a community go that maybe don't get the attention maybe they should.
Well, one of the unique things, I think so often we've, obviously contributions from our industry, and I see a lot of grateful partners who've been on the receiving side of that. And obviously investments, just the traditional economic impacts of tax revenues and things like that. One of the things that I think we often, I think I mentioned this earlier, because we're some of these big companies, many international companies are operating in, multiple continents around the world. One of the resources I think we don't, local communities don't take advantage of often, and I tell this particularly in the school systems, you have people working in your community who have lived around the world.
Yeah.
Like they have experiences that they can share with our young people in, some of our middle, high schools, elementary schools, based on what they've seen around the world. It's not always finding the expert in engineering that, you may have somebody from a company who can come in and speak to what it was like to live in Germany 50
Right.
years after World War II. Or,
Yeah.
I think from a cultural standpoint, we don't take enough advantage of just the wealth of knowledge and world experience that our industry, because we're these large companies, brings to the state and brings to some of our local communities. Yes, STEM is extremely important. We need future engineers. We need pipe fitters and instrumentation techs and people who want to work in the offshore industry. Um, but we also just, we need well-rounded communities, and we do. We have these, we often have people who, their families have lived around the world. It's just a unique window,
Hmm.
I think, that comes with having some of our member companies in the industry in our communities.
I'm gonna tell you, I've never thought about that,
Yeah,
and that is a great point.
yeah. And I
Wonderful.
can tell you, many of them, when they leave here,
Yeah.
love to share their Louisiana experience
There you go.
in Texas or in
Right.
Europe, or some of them are working in Africa. And I mean, they take what they learn here. I think it's just something we should embrace.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, let's take a moment and do some forward looking.
Okay.
We're about to change administrations in DC. And certainly there has been a lot of conversation, really, I think, in the past decade about leases in the Gulf of Mexico and the future of that. As you look forward and leading LMOGA with this transition, what do you see on the horizon in the next year or so that you think will be important to the industry and important to our communities?
I'm optimistic about the next 4 years. I think with a Trump administration, we clearly see opportunity.
Mhm.
Does it mean everything gets fixed overnight
Right.
or we get everything we want overnight? No. And we shouldn't. This needs to be a process that involves experts and discussion. But look, there's some fundamental things that we know we need. And, some of these things were challenges during the previous administration. We saw a pause on new LNG permits at a time when Louisiana and the U.S. were also trying to support European nations
Right.
with the fuel demands that they had because of the war with Russia and Ukraine.
Hmm.
Yet at home, we were going to slow down LNG exports. That doesn't make sense. I think you'll see an end to this LNG pause and pro LNG export policies. Offshore leasing basically came to a halt. A lot of people don't realize it's often 10 years from the time a company is awarded a lease to the point of production.
Hmm.
So
It's a long time.
the slowdown that
Mhm.
we saw during the last 4 years and the lapse in a 5-year leasing plan, if that was a more protracted period, you wouldn't feel it for another 5 to 10 years. I think it was a short enough window. Both Congress and the administration, I think, in this new term, are going to be looking to increase the number of lease sales offshore, which is good because it provides predictability.
Yeah.
Companies don't invest for today. You and I don't invest
Right.
for today or tomorrow. We're investing for the future, whether it's in our personal success, our own financial goals, corporations' financial goals. And so I think because it's only been 4 years, I think we have an opportunity in new administration. And look, increased lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico, great for Louisiana.
Mhm.
There is no offshore industry without Louisiana and the Louisiana coast and all of us who come with that coast. I'm talking big picture coast.
Right.
I think there's opportunity for our refineries
Yeah.
who have just been beat up. I mean, look, when I joined LMOGA 3 years ago. Gasoline prices were going up considerably. The administration blamed refineries. They said, you're not doing your part. Oil and gas companies, you're not doing your part. However, just a year before that, in his campaign, he said, I want to shut down every refinery in America.
Mhm.
Well, if you're a business and the president of the United States, the incoming president just told you he wants to put you out of business, what posture are you going to take for future investment?
Mhm.
I think now we see an opportunity where American energy security will mean continued oil and gas production, continued refining. We have to be responsible in how we do it. We have to continue the work of doing it with lower environmental, lower carbon impacts. But I think in the next 4 years there is opportunity, and that's important for Louisiana. I mean, look, like I said, oil and gas is a foundational pillar of what we do. There were a lot of discussions just last year as we were talking about tax reform in Louisiana, about the importance of revenues from our industry. And we want that to be consistent. We want it to grow. From a LMOGA perspective, we've been very much engaged. We sent a letter to the Trump Transition Committee before the holidays, outlining what we see the priorities are for Louisiana energy producers. We'll be having conversations over the next few months with policymakers in Washington as the new administration really starts to fill out at the agency level about what is right. You know, we are fortunate to have some great Louisiana leaders in Congress.
Yes.
And Leader Scalise and Speaker Johnson, and truly the entire Louisiana delegation. I mean, we talk with them. They know what is important to the industry. They know the people of Louisiana and how they are impacted by a strong industry. So I have a lot of hope, a lot of opportunity. And, you know, the connections between Washington and Baton Rouge and our local communities, excuse me.
Yeah.
The connection between Washington, Louisiana, our local communities continues to get tighter and tighter. Yeah. And so it does matter what happens on Capitol Hill. Yeah. It matters here to our success.
So I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to give you a crystal ball. And in your perfect world, 10 years from now, what does energy look like in Louisiana?
I think 10 years from now, energy is doing well. And it may sound like a kind of a very vanilla statement. I think it's consistent. I think it's growing. Doing well and being consistent, in my mind, is where we want to be. Yeah. We don't want the drastic ups and downs, for and against, the swings. Will we have a 5-year plan? Okay, now we can add leases. But then the next person wants to. We don't. The windshield wiper approach doesn't help anyone, quite honestly. Yeah, you have some short-term benefits, but we want it to do well. We want it to be consistent. We want it to be an industry that, whether you're a local community running a parish services or local school system, or you're the governor of Louisiana trying to figure out how you can continue to invest in Louisiana, that you know that our industry is going to be there, it is going to be consistent, and whether it's from an economic standpoint or just involvement in the communities, I think you want that certainty. Just like the industry wants predictability, the communities where we operate, I think, want the predictability. So I think 10 years from now, I think we're doing well. I also think 10 years from now, we will be dealing with developments in the R&D space and in technology that you and I don't know what they are yet. There will be something new. There will be new opportunities. And, it might be, a very rosy crystal ball that I'm looking into. But I really do think it's all in front of us if we want it and if the nation wants it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was recently at a conference, and one of the things they were talking about for those of us on the education side of things is that there is a significant percentage of jobs and training and education that people will need in the future that we don't even know.
That's right.
There are jobs that don't exist today that will be opportunities for our children 10 years from now. And for me, what we do here at Fletcher, that's why the work not only that we do is so critical, but staying nimble is because if I'm still offering and teaching things the same way 10 years from now as what we are doing today, then I'm doing a disservice to our community, because time is going to change. Technology is going to significantly change, not just what we know and what we can do and produce, but also how we learn and what the training and education needs to look like to prepare folks for those future workforce industries. So I don't think it's rosy at all. I think it's spot on, and I think that sounds like we're all kind of driving to that goal in the front mirror.
I think being nimble, being agile, pick your favorite word. It is. It's important. We are, we say it often. The world is changing faster. And if we're willing to embrace that and roll with it, I think the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. Okay, so look, I have time for just a couple more questions.
Sure.
I always like to maybe throw a little curveball. So let me just start with an easy one. I know that we are both significant Disney fans.
Absolutely.
Love ourselves some Disney. I just need to know, who's your favorite character?
Donald Duck.
Donald Duck. So is my husband.
Is Donald Duck and Chip and Dale?
Okay.
Donald Duck wins out, but Donald Duck and Chip and Dale, I mean, they're just
No
my
doubt.
kind of
Hands
guys.
down. All right. Mine's Mulan.
Okay.
I love
Awesome.
me some Mulan. And favorite ride?
Oh, favorite ride, Soarin' at Epcot,
Okay.
by far.
Have you rode Tron?
I have not yet.
Oh, it's so good.
It was a time management decision
Okay.
the last time we were there. Let's say
All
that.
right. Well, that might replace Soarin'. Now, you'll have to give me the update.
That's what I'm
For the
told.
listening audience, I promise you, at some point in this adventure that we're on this podcast, I'm going to bring Tommy back. We're going to do the whole podcast on how to plan your Disney trip.
Absolutely.
Like what you can't miss, where you got to eat, all the good stuff.
We could do it.
All right. So now I have also been told that you have or had a very Louisiana pet, is what I was told to ask you
Got
about.
a couple.
Tell me about your Louisiana pets.
Oh, I love these people. I have pictures. I wish I had it to share. When I was young, we actually had two. I had a nutria
Okay.
and I had a raccoon
Really?
at different points. I don't know how they would have done together. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we did. We had a pet nutria and a pet raccoon, and living in South Louisiana, look, we're one with nature.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and we had both for a while. My brothers were, I'm the oldest in my family. My brothers are a little bit younger, but there's pictures of us carrying the raccoon around, letting the nutria run around in the backyard.
Really?
And
Do you remember their names?
I can't remember the nutria's name. The raccoon's name was Patch.
Oh, okay.
The nutria's name, I was actually thinking about this back. I have to ask my parents because my dad would remember. But it was just cool. Dad built a cage for them both. We had them for a while. I mean, look, I'm not necessarily an advocate for having wild animals as pets. We got them both when I remember they were like, newly born, found. We lit it up. We lived near a swampy, wooded area. So they were close by.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a pet nutria and a pet raccoon. As I got older, we had more traditional. We had a great Chinese pug and things like that most people have. But the nutria and raccoon thing, it was a blast.
Yeah,
it was fun.
That's pretty cool.
That's right.
And I want to see pictures the next time
I'm
we
gonna
get
find the
together.
pictures. I will send them to you.
Absolutely. All right. So we'd like to end with what piece of advice would you have for our listening audience? What's a piece of advice you'd like to share with them?
Look, I think in the industry space, if you have questions about our industry, whether it's you're looking to make sure your kids have career opportunities, you live in a community next to a refinery, you want to know about the environment and the impacts. If you're thinking, that all this talk about energy security, and the security of our nation and the world is important. If you have questions about our industry, reach out to us. Reach out to the company that might be operating in your community. And I think you'd be amazed how much the company, and I can tell you us as an association, would love to sit down and talk with you. Right. Because I want our industry to be successful. And that's only if there's trust with the local community. I want our kids, mine included, to have opportunities. You can only prepare for your future. I'm getting ready to do high school scheduling next Tuesday with my daughter. As I'm figuring out high school classes, I got to help her at 14 think about what's possible 4, 6, 8, 10 years from now. So if you're just a parent who wants to know, is there something really there for my son or daughter? Reach out to us. I think if you're in that space, I can't give that advice enough. You'd be amazed. We want to have that dialogue. And then I think just from a community perspective, and I often share this when I speak to chambers and Rotaries and other business associations, if you care about your business, your community, and that's at the parish level, state level, nation, get involved. There are hundreds of ways to get involved. The most basic, obviously, we learn it in our core duties and responsibilities. Clearly go vote on election day. Right. But in all seriousness, get involved in conversations with elected leaders. Go to a town hall. You don't even have to go and speak, but understand, just know what's going on in your community. Be informed. In the industry, and working with the thousands of small businesses who operate kind of in our larger ecosystem of the oil and gas industry, I tell them often, a refinery, a Chevron, an Exxon offshore, Shell, we're going to invite policymakers to come see what we do. That's part of our job. We want them to understand so that they can be advocates for us, either in Baton Rouge or Washington. If you have a small business, it just happens to operate somewhere in Terrebonne Parish or in the River Region or North Louisiana, and you're there because of the industry, invite your local councilman, school board member, legislator, congressman, come see your small business. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, most of the people elected to office truly are elected with the goal of making their community better, making the businesses, the industries, ours, selfishly, better. And so just be involved. Welcome in those who can be advocates for you. I think that's extremely important. We do a lot of what we do because of networks of support, great partners like you and others. We focus every year. We actually have our annual meeting coming up in New Orleans in a few weeks. You're going to join us.
I am.
Guest.
I'm so excited.
And we focus on those partnerships because like I think I've said it probably a number of different ways just today. It really does take all of us identifying what the priorities are for our communities collectively, as business, as local residents. It takes us then speaking out to those in elected office, policymakers, understanding how votes they make in Baton Rouge and Washington, or in the courthouse, quite honestly, more and more, impact our communities. We focus on energy policy. Insurance policy matters. Education policy matters. Local tax policy matters. I mean, it's all important. It really is an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so that would be my advice. If you're in business, if you're in leadership, even if you're just a member of the community, get involved. Yeah. Ask questions. Ask us questions. Ask policymakers questions. Invite people in. Don't always assume that just because you don't know someone, they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Great advice. And you mentioned your annual meeting that's coming up. I know we might have some folks out there watching and listening. Any details like that about that you'd like to share with us?
It's something we do every year, and it's really fun. I mean, look, it's an industry annual meeting, but it's an opportunity for us to bring our members who represent our companies together with a lot of our partners, our elected leaders, just to have conversations. And what I'm particularly excited about with the panel that you're going to be joining. Yeah. We have, you will be there. We have Dr. Ken Ortling, who's a school superintendent in St. Charles Parish. Who else is going to be joining us? Dr. Kate Brumley.
Oh, great.
State Superintendent of Education is going to be joining us. And we may add to it, but the conversation is going to be the partnership. What does it take for the oil and gas and energy industry? What do we need that relationship look like between industry and education? We talk so much today about the impact that the work just you at Fletcher can have on us. Right. Imagine when you multiply that to your peer, campuses around the state, others in public and higher education. There's so much that we benefit, we have because of you and vice versa. And so these meetings are just great opportunities to have that conversation. And they never, though they physically end at the annual meeting, the conversations go on often for months and years to come, which is what we want.
Great. And I know you encourage people to reach out. Your website address?
www.LMOGA.com. And it has, stats on the oil and gas industry. Is a lot about carbon capture, which is, gets the most traffic these days. It's extremely important. We're in the middle of doing a new economic impact analysis of the industry on the state. It's our first comprehensive post-COVID analysis. Okay. So we'll be releasing the results of that impact study sometime in the spring. I'll be spending some time traveling around the state talking about that. So we're excited. And a lot of that will be on the website. But plenty of opportunities to learn about us.
Yeah, and so for everyone out there, lifelong learning opportunity for you if you are maybe not familiar with our energy industry here in the state, or maybe you just want to learn something new or learn a little bit more about what's going on. LMOGA.com is out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure to get to
It
know
has been
you.
so much fun. Thank you for the invitation.
I have enjoyed it. And thank you all for being here with us today on Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Want to give a special thanks to our partners at the Lumina Foundation who have made this podcast possible. Please be sure to check us out in the future and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.